Right, so everybody should know this. So the first thing is to know what they look like. So I'm not going to go at great lengths as to what they look like, but yellow legs, a dark thorax with full segment yellow and a stripe on the abdomen, and an orange face. So when these were first spotted, the beekeeper who first spotted them down in Devon said it looked like a flying fag end. So that is what you're looking for, and once you've seen them, and I have, you will recognise them. The problem is sort of seeing them in the first place. So they're smaller than a European hornet, so they're about 2.5 centimetres long. That's the comparison with a euro, pre-Brexit photo, or a pound coin. And in 2023, the NBU had 20,000 reports of Asian hornets, of which 150 were Asian hornets, and all the rest were median wasps, the darter dragonfly, the lunar hawk moth, the European hornet, my favourite hoverfly, Volotea zonaria, the hornet mimic hoverfly, and the greater wood wasp, which does look absolutely terrifying. However, we need to be familiarise ourselves. Who's got the Asian hornet watch app on their phone? All hands should be raised. Well, if you've really got it, not just because I've asked you to, so you really do need to download that, because if you see something, it's got photos of other insects you might muddle it up with, plus if you take a photo of what you think's an Asian hornet, it's got your GPS location, so they know exactly where you were. So, Asian hornets hang around outside beehives. And that prevents the bees from leaving the hive. Now the diet is 30% honeybees. The Asian hornet was really identified in France when they noticed the total insect population plummeting. So even though 30% of its diet is honeybees, 70% of it is everything else. So it has a huge impact on the general insect population. Now this starts off in 2004. And this is the spread of Asian hornet through France. And it's about 80 kilometres per year spread. And this finishes in 2017. And the reason why I'm showing you this map is that in 2004, when this started, the northern maritime climate was up here, and the southern maritime climate was down there. In the intervening years between 2004 and 2017, with climate change, the southern maritime climate is now up here. And for anybody who thinks that the climate isn't conducive to Asian hornets, the most northerly Asian hornet colony found in Europe was up here, up near Newcastle. And that was an active nest, but was mature enough to, it wasn't just a few dead hornets sort of rustling around. So for everyone who thinks that it's not going to like the UK and everything else, unfortunately, that's not the case. So in February and March, the queen starts a primary nest when it's about 12 degrees for 4 or more days, which is basically the entirety of our winter. It really hasn't been very cold. It's been 12 degrees for 4 or more days for quite a while. Now, when she first starts off the nest, she's just on her own. So she's chewing up fence posts to make paper, making this and keeping the eggs warm by herself. So the larvae take ages to develop because they're not very warm. So once she gets a few workers, this nest expands, and the workers do all the work, and they also help keep the larvae warm, so the nest expands very rapidly because the amount of time it takes from egg to mature insect is diminished significantly. So here are the little larvae, and they sort of live in this chewed up wood, and they make a little cocoon to cap the cell off, and then mature into the hornets. Once about 100 workers have emerged, it's thought that they then produce a secondary nest, which is often in a tree. Now, what we've discovered down in Kent this year is a lot of the secondary nests are in patches of brambles, rather than in a tree. So when the leaves fall in autumn, it says nests are spotted more easily. Myself and 3 other people who were, unlike me, I was just a novice, were expert Asian hornet nest spotters, all stood under a tree and didn't spot an Asian hornet's nest in the tree above us. It's jolly difficult. So here's an Asian hornet's nest. Here's one where I had in Jersey, modelled there by Bob, the Asian hornet expert down in Jersey. He was the man who first saw an Asian hornet there. So this was my holiday in Jersey, dissecting nests, working out which of the insects were male and which of the insects were female, counting hornets. People kept saying to me, what are the pubs like in Jersey? And I was going, I don't know. I was up at 7 in the morning putting out traps, and I spent all the hours of darkness counting hornets. So I've done the trapping and also some radio tracking, which is pretty exciting. But then what happens is the hornet dies and you end up trying to find your radio transmitter. So anyhow, this is how the NBU know how mature the nests are, because the males are produced first, so that when the queens emerge, they'll mate, because there are male hornets for them to mate with. So nest data. In Normandy, it's about the same size as Devon, and they destroyed 4,000 nests in 2022. So it's approximately 10 to 12 nests per square kilometre. Unfortunately, on the coast near us, it's 15 nests per square kilometre. So there's roughly 1,200 hornets in a nest, and each nest will consume about 11 kilograms of insects, which, I mean, insects aren't very heavy, so that's a hell of an impact on the environment. So this isn't really just about beekeeping, it's about insect life generally. And as I've already said, there's unlikely to be a northern limit. They sort of say, well, you don't get European hornets north of Yorkshire. Well, gradually that's going to go up, and so will the Asian hornet. And roughly 1,000 sexually mature adults are released from a mature nest. And then you have what we call surge year, which is double the number of nests. So surge year, warm winters, just had one of those. Early warm spring, just had one of those. Extended warm autumn, just had one of those. So more foundress queens survive. They say roughly only, less than 10% survive winter, and only 1 in 9 of those actually creates a nest. And the Nest Foundation uses a lot of resources, and the queens will actually fight. If one starts a nest and the other one can kill that queen and take it over, they will do it. So the impact in France of the nest locations, they're in trees, houses, outbuildings, hedges, bramble patches. So when the cyclists cycle down the road, the hornets come out and attack them. If kids are playing football and the ball goes into a patch of brambles, the hornets will respond, shall we say. They particularly like to have nests near rivers and lakes. And they also appear to like urban areas. Now this could be because of course there's more people in urban areas, so you're more likely to spot the hornets, or it could genuinely be that it is a good source of food, because there's nothing a hornet likes better than a KFC. So when you chuck your takeaway on the ground, this is what happens. And also more people to spot them. So if you're within 5 metres of a nest, any sudden movement or vibration will cause a defensive reaction. And in France, they've now had to move a lot of their food markets indoors, because when they put the food outside, the hornets will just land on the meat and the fish, and then people are too scared to buy everything. Also, who wants dinner with hornet footprints on it? So in Korea, some very brave, possibly foolish souls decided to do an experiment on how hornets respond to attack. So the first thing is the sting is 6mm, so an ordinary bee suit isn't any good anyhow. You need a specialised bee suit to protect you. And these people went with no protection at all. So one hornet can sting multiple times. And if you do have a mass attack by hornets, they say run, and you've really got to run quite far away. Cover your face and neck. And they don't tend to go for people wearing light colours, so if you've got anybody wearing dark colours, just leave them behind, they're dead meat, just run off. The hornets can spray venom into your eyes, and they have had people at the NBU who have had that happen to them, and although it's very painful, it's not permanent, so when they attack, when they remove the nest, they do wear goggles. Now, one of the other things is that in Spain, anaphylaxis has gone up quite. It's now about 3 times more people are dying of anaphylaxis than used to before the hornet arrived, and about 80% of these deaths by anaphylaxis are caused by hornets. Asian hornets, and half of these are from a first exposure. Now, usually with anaphylaxis, you get stung once, you're perfectly fine, you get stung a second time, and then you have a massive immunoresponse, and your airway is blocked, and you can't breathe, and then you die. So the thought is that some of the things that are in wasp venom are also in Asian hornet venom. So if you get stung by a wasp, you're then sensitised to Asian hornet venom, and that's why an apparent first sting will give you anaphylaxis, because if you've been stung by a hornet, I think you pretty much know about it. So this means that when the sort of grape harvesters are going to harvest the grapes and the hornets have got there first because they really like fruit, they go to pick the grapes and they get stung. If you're chopping down a tree and you don't know there's a hornet's nest in there and you chop it down and there is a hornet's nest in there, that's going to end rather badly for you, and also fruit picking in orchards as well. So, last year in the UK, Jersey is roughly 120 square kilometres and there were 339 nests. And the last one was found in December, which is not that long ago, and it was still active because it's so mild. So it doesn't look like, people, a couple of weeks of frost will see them off. No. In the mainland, we had 72 nests in 56 locations. The most northerly nest was the one that was at the drone release stage, and that was the one at Yarm near Newcastle. The nearest nest to this hall was Hackney, 3.6 kilometres away. So anyone who thinks Asian hornet isn't coming near us, I'm afraid it's already here. We in the UK are at the eradication stage. Now, a lot of the advice that has come out on YouTube has been in France. And the situation in France is very different because they've lost their opportunity to eradicate. That, they can control it as best they can, but they can't eradicate. So what they're doing out there is not really comparable to what we're doing. So, having watched all of these videos, one of the questions that's always asked is there a stable UK population? So they have done DNA analysis that shows the queens have each mated with one drone, and they feel that's most likely to be that they have come over from France. If we've got a very small population in the UK, the chances are they will have mated with one drone, so that's a bit, the jury's out on there. However, the DNA from where they found several nests together, and they have done, didn't show that the queens were related to each other. So rather there being a foundress from the year before last, who has produced these hornets who've then gone on to make these nests, they think that this isn't the case, and these are ones that just blow in. In southeast Kent, they had 5 nests that produced sexually mature adults. So the DNA evidence for an established UK population is inconclusive. Unfortunately, on the 11th of March this year, they found an Asian hornet in a shed in Kent starting a nest off. There have been 2 others found dead, one in Preston at an import-export hub, so it could have come in from France, and one in Romford was found a bit squished up in a vehicle that had come or had visited France. So it could be that it had been picked up there and it just sort of sneaked in, but we really don't know. So this is the life cycle of the hornet. So at this point, the foundress queens are sort of setting up the nest, and we wouldn't really expect to see them bothering hives until maybe about May. However, we haven't had a winter, it's been quite warm. So by the time we get to July and they're making, the nest has really expanded and they want protein to fuel the production of sexually mature adults, that is when we're expecting to see them around our hives in August and September. So the males are produced first. There is some evidence that they may even mate within the nest. Then the queens will fly out and hibernate somewhere. The drones, the males, will just die in the traditional way of bees. And that is the life cycle. So, spring trapping. There's been a lot of controversy about spring trapping. Usually, hornets will forage up to about 600 metres to 1 kilometre. So if you have hornets in your area, they will actually, if you've got them within about 2 kilometres of a trap, they will find it because they really like the smell of trapping, which is why we bought a load for you. So The trapping should be around between February. Once we hit May, it should stop, because then you're going to get huge problems with bycatch. So I've got my trap. There are some traps at the back, and you put a sponge in the base to stop things drowning. So there's my washing up sponge, and the reason why it's got a bite out of it is because that's now sitting in my trap at home. So that prevents bycatch drowning, and you need to make a hole at the top of the trap of about 6 millimetres to let insects that aren't hornets out. So I've got my soldering iron set up back there, and I'm going to be dutifully making holes in traps so you don't have to. I've tried hot nails, a lighter, a skewer, and all sorts of things. It's very possible to ruin a trap doing all of that. So I thought, rather than you wasting your traps, I shall have a go with the soldering iron. However, there was originally, the NBU advice was that you put the traps in your apiary. And what they have now thought is that if you put them in your apiary, the bees will fly over the hornets will fly over your hive and think, oh, that smells good. And then you end up with them in your apiary when they might have just flown over it and not noticed. So we are now recommending put it in your garden where you can see it, and release the bycatch daily, just in case you've got European hornets in there. So there's my trap with I think I used a hot skewer there, and I've just got it on the table outside my kitchen so that I can see what's being trapped. And I put that out at the beginning of February, and so far I have trapped absolutely nothing of any way, shape, form or description. So here's some advice from France about the impact of the hornets on the bees. So Asian hornets are attracted by the scent of pollen, honey and Nasanov gland pheromone, so they're going to be attracted to your bees. So you can use solid floors to reduce the scent, or put an inspection board in if you've got open mesh flooring. Keep hive manipulation brief, and ideally in the early morning or dusk, because Asian hornets do not fly at night. European hornets do, but Asian hornets do not. And they certainly go to bed before bees, and they get up after bees. So that would be the best time, early morning or dusk. Don't leave hives open, don't leave comb out. I mean, obviously we've always said don't leave comb out because of the disease risk, but you definitely don't want to leave comb out or extract honey in the apiary. I know a gentleman who rides a bicycle with a little trolley on, and he has his extractor in the back, and he goes and extracts all his honey by the side of the hive. So I think that would probably not be a good idea. So the Asian hornets flying to and fro outside of the hive, the bees know that they're going to get scoffed, so obviously they don't want to leave while they can see the hornets are there. So this causes forage paralysis. If there's no food coming in, that can put the queen off lay, and of course the peak time for hornets is going to be July, August, and that's when your winter bees are going to get laid. So if you don't have any winter bees being laid, your colony is not going to survive. And also, if they get very stressed, apparently they can just kill the queen. I don't really know why, but that was what the gentleman from France said. And obviously, if they can't get food or water, then the colony is going to starve. So apiary defences, reduce colony stress. So if there's a dearth of nectar, feed them, treat for varroa. Because what they've discovered in France is that, okay, Asian hornets are bad if your colony is small, weak, varroa, starving, then Asian hornet will polish it off. If it's a strong colony, the chances are it won't. So try and run strong colonies if you can, and deal with any issues in your hives. Grow grass, nettles or brambles in front of the hive entrance. Asian hornets like a nice clear access to the front of the hive. So they will want to be able to get there, and if you've got lots of stuff in the way, they don't like that. The other thing you can do is put something called a skirt around your hive stand, so that the hornets can't sort of like fly in from under the hive to catch your bees at the entrance and things like that. And you can put a muzzle, which can be made of chicken wire. There's still sort of controversy about exactly what size aperture of chicken wire you should make your muzzle with, because if it's too small, as the bee flies in, it goes, oh, I've just got to get through that little hole. So even though it stops the hornets flying in, the bee will get picked off by the hornet as it's trying to manoeuvre. The other thing is that people have thought, oh, I know, I'll put my entire apiary in a big cage, and then of course the hornets just wait outside the big cage, because unfortunately they are very intelligent. I have spoken to a pest controller from France, and he says that European hornets, if you poison the nest, the European hornets will just come back and go, ooh. The Asian hornet will know that something is wrong, and they just won't go back to the nest. So, they reckon grouping hives 5 to 10 together, so that the weakest ones will get picked off, and by the time you've figured out you've got an Asian hornet problem, you've got time to act rather than 1 or 2. And put them closer together, but you have to, at that rate, use a coloured entrance so the bees don't drift. So in Eastern Europe, you get these sort of great banks of hives, and they've all got different coloured entrances so that the bees know which is home. So I've already said screen the sides and under the hive stands. So we're now reckoning about 13 millimetres is the size, but this appears to be subject to change. And the idea of the muzzle is the bees will view that as an extension of the entrance to their hive, and the hornets will view it as also as that and not want to come in through and get too close. What they have spotted in France is that the Asian hornets have eaten all the insects, so now the European hornets are eating bees, which is rather difficult. And in the worst case scenario is that you have to be able to move your hives, or have somewhere where you can move your hives if you have predation. So, 4 hornets, they reckon, reduces foraging by about 40%. 6, probably about 60%. And by the time you've got 12 hornets outside, you're looking at forage paralysis, so that colony is going to be in big trouble. So, as we said, make sure the bees have got stores. As the predation peaks in August and September, remove the honey before then, so you're not drawing the hornets into your apiary with the scent of honey. Make sure the colony is stable, so they're reckoning requeen early, so try not to, I mean obviously it's not always possible to do this, but if possible, avoid requeening late so that the colony is nice and strong and you haven't got a colony that's too easily picked off and eaten by hornets. And you can stop hornets getting into your colonies by having a hornet guard, which is about 5.5 millimetres holes, and that the hornets can't get in because they're just too big. The other thing that's been spoken about a lot is the electric harp. Now this has been quite effective in France and Spain. Initially they had a problem when it rained because the power supply used to short out, which is obviously a disadvantage. It has been found that we don't really have enough sun to support an electric harp with solar power alone, so you need to have a supplementary battery. Now, anecdotal evidence from Andrew Durham is that the bees really don't like the battery, it upsets them, so don't stick your battery under a hive, sort of stick it somewhere where it's going to be powering up the harps but not under the hive. Now, at the moment, I think Thorn have just started selling them, and they're about double the price of importing them from Europe. But then, of course, you've got delivery, import charges, VAT, and Brexit delay. Now, there's a wet version which has a bath underneath. So the idea is the hornet flies along, gets electrocuted, goes and drowns in this trough of water. Unfortunately, what the bees do is fly out and go, oh, look, someone's left some water for us, and they go and drink it and get electrocuted, which is really quite irritating. So what you do is you put some washing up liquid in, some lemon, apparently lemon washing up liquid, stops the bees thinking that this is a yummy drink you've left out for them, and that is the way to not have them drowning. So the positioning of the harps, when the bees fly in and out, they just sort of fly off on their beeline. The hornets will circle round. So you put the harps on the flight path of the hornet, not the flight path of your bees. So you either put them between the hives, so there's your hives, and you can have your harp there, then your bees will fly in and out, and the hornets will sort of fly around and get caught up there, or have them between, so the bees just fly in and out, and as I say, the hornets will circle around and get trapped there. So what can we do now? You're all thinking to yourself after this awful litany of horror. Right, the first thing is to do, raise public awareness. Almost all of the nests in the UK last year were spotted by a member of the public. Our social organiser, Charlie, his brother-in-law was going for a walk and he saw an insect he didn't recognise. So he put it through Google Lens to identify it, and it said it was a European hornet, so he thought, no, it isn't. So he sent the picture to Charlie, and luckily Charlie had been to one of my talks only 2 days previously and said that's an Asian hornet, and that was the sighting they had in Rayleigh in Essex. And if none of that is, obviously it would be better, you know, that only happened because we're trying to raise public awareness. So whenever I do talks, I always give people the Asian hornet posters to go on the wall. They come free. Put them in your local shops, shopping centre, schools, libraries, church halls, particularly things like allotments, garden centres and parks where people might see them. I always hand them out. I mean, if you give children, hey, have this for free, it doesn't matter if they turn it into a paper arrow and somebody sees it, at least it's seen. And basically, if we don't look for it, we don't know where it is. So, you know, we really do have to try and get everybody on our side looking. So, monitoring is good, but you want to have the traps that release bycatch, and then report using the Asian Hornet Watch app. And if possible, keep the insect. So if it's trapped in your house, run outside and ring up the NBU. And obviously if you find it's dead or something, just keep the actual insect because then they can study the DNA. The other thing you can do is volunteer. Because just supposing the plan that they have currently in Kent, where they have traps out 1 every square kilometre. So they're hoping to trap all, you know, any queens that were there, they're hoping to trap them because, you know, Kent isn't that far away from London, so if we can stop them in Kent and they don't get any further, then that would be great. However, we need coordinators. We have a coordinator for Essex at the moment, which is just one person, but we do need something called verifiers, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. So how can you volunteer? Well, little does Secretary Dan know, but you can email him. When this video goes out to other beekeeping associations, I will not have your address in it, Dan, so don't panic. So this is Martin Smith, who runs ER2, and this is what the duties of the coordinator are. 1 or 2 per county association, we've got that. 1 per branch or division, we haven't got that at the moment, but we may do. So basically, pass on the reported sightings. If a photo is taken of an Asian hornet and it looks exactly like an Asian hornet, then the NBU can act. If they've got somebody says they saw something like an Asian hornet and it flew away, unfortunately this is where we tend to come in because they may want us to investigate. So it's basically to be the local point of contact where spring trapping is to be undertaken. So coordinators report back the results and develop the local plan. Well, we do have a local plan, and the local plan is that Katy gives you a great long talk, terrifies the bejeebers out of you, and you pick up a trap and subtract it at the end, and let us know where you've put it, and if you find anything in it that is an Asian hornet, let us know, and the NBU. So, verifiers, we can have lots of these. I mean, if there were 20,000 reported sightings of the NBU, even if we only have like a few dozen per beekeeping association, that's great. So, you can do a little quiz on the NBU website, on the BBKA website, and that will help you identify Asian hornets. So, if a sighting is sent to the nearest coordinator, and it's sent on to one of the verifiers, and they report back, then the report's back submitted to the NBU, or nobody does anything, then they find a different coordinator or a different verifier, and positive sightings, the NBU will be working on them themselves. So, as the Asian hornet is from Asia, and so are camellias, they do half love a camellia. That was when they were first spotted in Jersey, and I had the little setup I had where I was tracking them was also outside of a camellia bush. So this is the where you might look for them in spring, and this is where you would look for them in autumn. So that is it.